Dave Ramsey is known as the man who cuts up credit cards on stage. And to say that he's made his impact on the financial world, both to myself as well as millions of others, would be an understatement. And sometimes to get to that level of success, you need to dig your heels in on controversial issues. So credit cards, are those a controversial issue? Should they be black and white? I think that there are some definite benefits to using credit cards, such as fraud protection and rewards, but there are also definite disadvantages to using credit cards, such as it makes it easier to pay less attention to your own personal finances and to get away with not budgeting. Both of these things make it easier to slip into debt, which is sort of the big con of using credit cards. And are these enough that Dave should say that nobody should use a credit card ever? And is he right in making it a one-size-fits-all solution? If you haven't been to my channel before, welcome. My name is Zachary Schlecht, your personal finance coach, where my main goal is to help you win with money by gaining control of your personal finances. And in this video, we're going to look at what benefits credit cards do offer, as well as at what point do the cons outweigh the pros. Then we'll look at who shouldn't touch a credit card with a 10-foot pole and who shouldn't feel guilty about using them. And finally, we'll look at why Dave is so upset about credit cards and why his reasoning and arguments aren't always completely logical. Stay tuned. First, what benefits do credit cards actually offer consumers? And what quote-unquote benefits do they offer that don't really matter? First, they have good fraud protection. And debit cards these days do have a lot better fraud protection than they used to, but they still don't quite match the level of fraud protection that you get with a credit card. And not only is the fraud protection itself better, but there's also an extra layer of security, where if fraud occurs on a debit card, it directly affects your finances at your bank. If fraud occurs on a credit card, you're removed from those and the fraudulent charges can be taken care of and not affect your actual money in the bank. So there's one win for credit cards. Something else that credit cards say that they can help you with is getting your credit score information. And that may be true, but you can also go to websites like creditkarma.com to get this information for free, as well as just contacting the individual credit score companies and being able to request your credit score. So this quote unquote benefit doesn't really matter, I don't think. The next benefit of using credit cards is helping to build your credit score. Now this one is kind of a wash because a credit score is the least important factor in gaining control of your personal finances, and I guarantee it will not help you win with money. This chart shows that even people with really high credit scores still have an incredible amount of credit card debt. If you follow Dave's advice of getting rid of all the debt in your life, then the only thing that a credit score could possibly help you with is getting a mortgage, which you can do that without a credit score. You just have to use manual underwriting. However, a credit score does make applying for a mortgage a faster, easier process, and you can often get a better mortgage rate with a good credit score than with manual underwriting. So that's why I say that building your credit using a credit card is sort of a wash as far as benefits go. It shouldn't be the main focus, but it does help. And the final benefit of credit cards are the rewards programs that you can qualify for, such as cashback or travel points. However, that leads right into what are the disadvantages of a credit card. And one of the biggest ones is that most rewards are not even redeemed or utilized by consumers. And they're often used as just a bait and switch by credit card companies. Statistics from 2017 show that an average of 31% of credit card holders never actually redeem their credit card rewards. And that breaks down to 49% of cash back was redeemed, and only 17% of airline miles were redeemed, and only 12% of gift cards. Now, even if you are part of the 31% that does redeem their credit card rewards, there's still a major point where those advantages are far outweighed by the cons of using a credit card. And that line is determined by whether or not you have revolving credit card debt. And more recent statistics from 2019 show that 37% of households have revolving credit card debt. And of those, they have an average estimated credit card balance of $6,849, which costs an average of $1,162 in interest annually. And this is true of people across the credit score range. Looking at the chart that we showed earlier, even up to credit score ranges in exceptional, have very high revolving credit card balances. Now, most cashback rewards programs are usually between 1% and 3% cashback. Sometimes they might be higher, but usually that's only for a limited time or a limited dollar amount. So if we assume just an average across the board of 2% cash back, and we apply that to a $6,849 credit card balance, guess how much you get back? $140 of cash back. And that is just absolutely laughable compared to the interest paid of $1,162. So now let's look at who should not touch a credit card with a 10-foot pole versus who should be okay using a credit card. Basically, if you're not a habitual monthly budgeter and you don't stay on budget every single month, if you don't have an emergency fund, and if you don't pay off a credit card in full each and every month, then you should not use a credit card at all. You should pull a Dave and cut that up and just toss it and just stick with cash and debit cards. However, if you're the opposite of all of those, if you are a habitual monthly budgeter and you stay on budget every month and you have been for at least a year so that you have those habits solidified, if you do have an emergency fund and if you do pay off your credit card each and every single month, then I don't think that you should really feel bad about using a credit card, despite what Dave says. However, a couple of things that I would keep in mind. You should have the cash on hand to pay off that credit card at a moment's notice. You shouldn't be using the credit card throughout the month, basing that budget on a paycheck that you're going to get at the end of the month. I have a video on that actually, and that's my biggest budgeting tip, is that you should have the money at the start of the month that you're going to use to budget and use throughout the month, rather than having that flipped around and using a credit card throughout the month and paying it off once your paycheck hits your bank account. Another thing is you should only use your credit card for purchases that you would make anyway. And if the above points are true about you already being a good budgeter, then that's going to be kind of a given. And finally, if you do go to the trouble and frankly the risk of using a credit card and misusing a credit card, then at least make sure that you redeem the rewards and be part of the 31% that does actually get that benefit out of using a credit card. Now, why is Dave so upset about credit cards? I think the unspoken reasons are that he personally had a bad experience with them, and when he was so far in debt that he had to go bankrupt, I think he's still resentful from that experience. But I think the bigger reason is that he's built his brand on giving this advice that nobody should use a credit card ever. And that's a big part of his brand, right? He's the guy who's up on stage cutting them in half. And I think that's good advice to give to a lot of people. A lot of people who call into his show have trouble with credit card debt. And it's easier just to make it a black and white issue when so many people you're trying to help have that same issue. However, some of his explicit reasons are that he states that 45% of Americans pay off their balance in full every month, and his takeaway is that the majority don't pay them off in full every month. Where an equally valid takeaway is that 45% of people do pay it off every month and they treat it like cash. However, he's ignoring that almost half of people do that. And whether the statistic is 30% or 45%, I think my takeaway is that if you are in that minority, the 30%, 45%, whatever it is, and you agree with the above points where you're a monthly budgeter, you have an emergency fund, you paid off in full every month, you shouldn't feel bad about using a credit card and reaping some of those benefits that they offer. Another argument that he makes is that using cash makes you feel the pain of the purchase, where swiping a credit card sort of blocks that pain. It sort of anesthetizes the pain. And I think that if used in conjunction with a monthly budget, this is far less likely to be true. And even if you do overspend, it's easier to shuffle your budget around if you're using a credit card or even a debit card compared to using cash. And honestly, my wife's and my experience, and I know a lot of other people out there, actually have the opposite effect, where if you have cash, it's almost like that cash is burning a hole in your pocket. Where if you have a credit card or a debit card and you swipe to make that purchase, then you know that it's coming out of your bank account and you know you have to account for that individual transaction. So I think there's arguments to both sides of that. And a lot of times Dave will put this whole argument on the backs of the researchers who made this find. And I'm not disagreeing with the researchers at the most prestigious universities, but I don't think that those studies are as black and white as Dave makes them. I think there are other avenues that they could have looked into, such as the people that they're actually studying. Are they good at handling their own personal finances, or aren't they? And I think there's going to be a big difference between those two types of people in how they handle credit cards. And his final two arguments are about the rewards, and these are the most humorous to me. He says there's not a millionaire out there who's made his millions off of airline miles. And I have never heard one single person make that claim. I've never thought that. Nobody else I've ever talked to is planning on getting rich off of credit card rewards. The point is that I have a budget, I make money, I spend money. If I know what I'm going to spend my money on anyway, and I use a credit card and I can get 1 or 2 or 3% back on that, then why not? You know, that's a few extra $100 at least a year, if not, maybe $500,000-$600,000 a year that you can take and put it into savings, or every couple months use it and take my wife out for a nice dinner, basically for free, using money that I've spent anyway. And I'm not going out and saying, oh, I have this credit card, and if I spend it, then I get percent. No. I'm disciplined enough to know what my budget is, and my wife is disciplined enough to know what our budget is, that we spend the credit card within our budget, and we just happen to get those points back. So there's my argument for why credit cards have some gray area in whether they're okay or not to use compared to Dave's black and white statements. However, I would take a hard look at yourself and your habits and your personal finances to see if using a credit card is holding you back from winning with money and from gaining control of your personal finances. And if that's true, then that's totally okay. Just stop using them, even if it's for a year or 2 years. Stop using them, use debit card, cash. My wife and I used cash for 95% of our purchases for the first year of our marriage, and a debit card for the other 5%. And we did that just while we kind of got used to working on finances together, so we didn't slip into any kind of bad habits. So it's okay to put credit cards away for a while, reset financially, and form some good habits, and then come back to using credit cards to get these rewards later on down the road. So I would love to hear your thoughts down below. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? This is definitely sort of a contentious topic. So I'd love to sort of engage in some more conversation. So leave a comment down below. And while you're down there, hit the like and subscribe button. And I will see you on the next video.